Hello all, welcome to Tech Capture. So in this video we are going to discuss about a Google Cloud Composer. So if you are new to this channel, let me introduce myself. So myself Vishal Bulbule. I am Google developer expert in Google Cloud. I am also fully certified in Google Cloud and also a Google Cloud champion innovator. So I already have a complete playlist on all the Google Cloud services. If you haven't gone through it, you can just check out my other playlist where you will see a lot of videos on Google Cloud infrastructure, Google Cloud data engineering, Google Cloud security, Google Cloud networking, then Terraform with Google Cloud, then generative AI in Google Cloud. You can see 300 plus videos on my channel. Coming to the point, let's start with the what is a Google Cloud Composer, and we'll see what we are going to learn in this video. So in this video we'll first see what is a Cloud Composer, what is Apache Airflow, what are the different versions are there on Google Cloud for Cloud Composer, what is the difference between these Cloud Composer versions, what is the different architecture each version is having, and then we'll see how to create a Cloud Composer on a Google Cloud. So these things we are going to cover in this video. Do not worry, we have a complete playlist on a Cloud Composer. We will see how to create the basic DAGs to the very advanced DAG, and we'll see each and everything about the Apache Airflow or a Google Cloud Composer. Okay, so if I'm using the word Apache Airflow or Composer, do not get confused because both are considered as the same thing when it comes to a Google Cloud. Why I'm saying that? So just you will understand at the end of this video, because first we'll see what is a Cloud Composer. Okay, so Cloud Composer is a managed airflow where infrastructure is managed by a Google Cloud. Now Airflow is a separate technology. Okay, but what Google Cloud did, okay, Google Cloud say instead of you manually installing these Apache Airflow software or tools on Linux servers or any of these servers, we will manage infrastructure for you. We will take care of all the installation, we will take care of all the database. You just use a Google Cloud. Okay, and that's why Google is created a new service as a Cloud Composer, where you don't need to worry about a backend servers or backend infrastructure. You have to just create the composer from the UI and you can use Airflow just like a open source Airflow. Okay, so Cloud Composer is nothing different than Airflow, just the difference is the infrastructure is managed by a Google Cloud. So similar kind of service you can see on the AWS as well. This is MWAA, that is Managed Workflow for Apache Airflow. So you will see the similar service in AWS as well. So that is the basic things you have to remember, that Cloud Composer is nothing but Apache Airflow but on the Google Cloud. Okay, so that is the simple thing you have to always remember. Now first we'll see then what is a Apache Airflow. If you are new to Cloud Composer or if you are new to Apache Airflow, so we should understand what is Apache Airflow as well. Okay, so just take an example that I have to bake a pizza. So what steps I will take? So first I will take a wheat flour. Okay, then I will just create a dough, then I will just give a proper shape to dough using the rolling pins or then hand toss. Okay, don't worry about the wrong sequence here. I missed that. Then I'll create the round shape, then I will add some toppings, and then I will bake my pizza. Okay, now you worried before giving the shapes or before adding the topic, you already seen the image of baking the pizza, so that is wrong, right? So here sequence is matters, each and every step is matters, and sequence also matters, that I cannot skip any of the steps to create a pizza. Okay, I cannot put all toppings in these steps, I cannot bake the pizza during the first step. So you have to take each of these steps, each of these tasks should be performed in a sequential manner, and each of these tasks is dependent on other task or a previous task. Okay, so similar way happens in a data engineering. Okay, so how data engineers works, where we first extract the data, okay, or ingest the data somewhere, then we clean the data or there is a pre-processing on data, then we process the data or apply some transformation on data, and then we load the data in any of the data warehouse, and again these steps are dependent on each other, just like our previous day-to-day life example of baking the pizza. So you cannot skip any of these steps. If you are looking for a scalable data pipeline, accurate data pipeline, you cannot skip each of these steps. Then how you will maintain that dependency and sequence? Then for these we need Apache Airflow. So Apache Airflow help to create a data pipeline, help to orchestrate all these tasks in sequential manner. We can manage the dependency that okay, we have to perform the task in sequential way. First we have to execute this task, then have to execute this task. If this task fail, then it should not go to the next task. Okay, so all these dependencies can be managed in the Apache Airflow. Okay, so just this is a simple example, the simple way I'm trying to explain, and we can maintain this sequence, this dependency. If it is failing, then we can any backup task we have to do. All these things we can do using the Apache Airflow. Okay, so now we see what is Apache Airflow. You can see Apache Airflow is an open source tool to schedule, monitor and manage workflow. It helps automating the data pipelines. Then why to use Airflow? As I discussed in earlier slide, to automate and schedule tasks, monitor the workflows, handle dependencies, scales easily for large data workflows. Then how does it work? So in Apache Airflow, just like a job, we are having DAG. So it is, don't get confused again with the new word DAG. DAG is nothing but the job in Apache Airflow, or it is just kind of the workflows where a multiple tasks are there. So on my screen you can see this is one example of DAG, and each of this box is defined as a task. Okay, so this complete job is defined as a DAG, and each of this box is defined as a task, and there is a dependency between each of these tasks. Okay, then there are different components of Airflow, that is scheduler, worker, web server, database. So we'll see all these one by one in our next slides. Okay, so this is a simple definition or simple concept of what is Apache Airflow. This is the open source tool which used to create a data pipeline workflows. Okay, so don't go much deep into the definition, because no one is going to ask about what is airflow. You have to just remember why we need airflow, where airflow is used, and what we can do with the airflow. Okay, then next we'll see now what is cloud composer. Now we are clear with the airflow, that it is used to create a data pipeline, it is used to create data pipeline and handle the dependencies. Okay, now cloud composer, as I mentioned, Google Cloud Composer is fully managed workflow orchestration service built on Apache Airflow. It allows you to create, schedule and monitor data pipeline in a Google Cloud. This is fully managed as infrastructure is managed by Google for Airflow. We can create the DAGs, and DAGs are written in Python. We will create multiple DAGs, and there is a very easy integration with all Google Cloud services like BigQuery, Cloud Storage, Dataflow and Dataproc, and it provides the scalable and secure infrastructure. It is also having option to run with a private IP environment, and you will have the IAM based access control for your web servers and other services as well. So also there is a versioning and monitoring is also for the Airflow while executing your DAG. And this is a basic architecture or the functional diagram you can see for the cloud composer. It is having Apache Airflow DAG. Your DAG consists of operators, tasks and dependencies, and everything is on the Google Cloud infrastructure, where you will have multiple mechanism for triggering the DAG, monitoring the DAGs, and there will be a detailed logging which will be in the Google Cloud itself. And this Airflow you can use to have the data pipeline which can be on a Google Cloud, or which can integrate on the on-premises, or it can also be integrated with the multi-cloud environment. Okay, so this is about the cloud composer. So we are not going to only discuss about the theoretical part. We will jump into the cloud console. We will see a cloud composer, how we can create the cloud composer. Okay, so all things we are going to discuss in this video. So I will go to Google Cloud Console now, and I will show you how we can create Cloud Composer, what are options we are having while creating Cloud Composer there, what are the different versions of Cloud Composer, and what is the difference between each version of the Cloud Composer, and which version we should use Cloud Composer. So all things we will discuss on our Google Cloud Console. So let's go to the Google Cloud Console now. So I am on my Google Cloud Console now. I have one project in my organization. So you can simply search here for a composer, and it will take you to the composer screen. So we usually call it as a composer environment and not as a composer instance, because it will create a number of resources while creating the composer and not a single resource. It will create multiple services. I will walk you through that as well, why we call it as a Cloud Composer environment. Okay, now as if you are using for a very first time in your project, you have to enable the API. Okay, so I'll just enable the API, so I can start using this environment or a composer. So this is a mandatory steps for using all the Google Cloud services, that first you have to enable the API for that service, and then only you can use that service. So it will take hardly around 30 seconds to enable your API. Okay, so API is now enabled, and now you can see you have option to create environment. So Cloud Composer environment, with Composer you can easily create and manage Airflow environment. Get started by creating first environment. So if I click on create environment, you will see Composer 2 and Composer 3. For now you can ignore the Airflow version, but now here you will see Composer 2 and Composer 3. Okay, so previously there was also a Composer 1, but now this is completely decommissioned, and now you will have a Composer 2 and Composer 3. But what is the difference between Composer 2 and Composer 3? So you can see here it as a modernized, and Composer 2 you do not see that modernized option. But what does it mean? Okay, so we'll just jump into the architecture of the Cloud Composer before creating the Cloud Composer. So I'll just search on the Google Cloud documentation, and you will get the architecture. Okay, so here you will see the Cloud Composer environment architecture is there, and we will see the difference between all three Cloud Composer architecture. First I will show Cloud Composer 1. You can see Cloud Composer is in the post maintenance mode, and it is not currently available, but some older customer who are having using the Composer since past few years still on the Composer. Okay, now what was the Cloud Composer 1 and how was the architecture was there for Composer 1? Okay, so one thing to remember whenever we are creating the Cloud Composer environment, this is the managed service. Okay, it means the infrastructure is managed by Google, and few things are still not visible, or still a lot of experts are not available, not aware of this part, that whenever we create the Cloud Composer environment, it uses two projects. One is your project, and another is one tenant project where you do not have access, and it is completely managed by Google. You do not have any visibility, or you do not have any access to that tenant project. So this tenant project is nothing but the Google managed project. Okay, so you can see the right blue side, this is the tenant project which is managed by Google. Now in Composer 1, okay, let me just open the Composer 1, 2 and 3 side by side. Okay, so it will be easy. So I will just open the Composer 1. Here I will just open Composer 2, and at the end I will open the Composer 3. So here I will just open Composer 1 diagram. So here you can see there are multiple services on Composer. Here it is creating the GK cluster, and in GK cluster, in the red part you can see it is the GK cluster, and it is creating the multiple services like Airflow workers, Fluentd, Airflow monitoring, Composer agent, then Cloud SQL proxy, Airflow initdb, and then it is having the one storage bucket for Airflow. And in tenant project there will be Airflow database, Cloud SQL storage, Cloud SQL proxy, Airflow web server, IAP for secure access, and then other services like PubSub, artifact registry, cloud logging, cloud monitoring. So this was a bit complex architecture for Composer 1, which is completely decommissioned, and no one is going to ask you about Composer 1 now, but I just want to show you the difference between Composer 1, Composer 2 and 3. I'll go to the Composer 2. So just remember the few things here, which is in customer project and which services are in the tenant project or in the Google project. So here GK cluster is in our project where we are creating the Composer. Most of the services are in customer project, and only Airflow database and Cloud SQL, auth proxy and web server is in tenant project. Okay, now we'll see for the 2. So here now you can see in Composer 2 what is happening now. Again GK cluster is having auto scaling. So here GK cluster was not having auto scaling, but now in Composer 2 auto scaling is added. And also earlier web server was in a Google project, but now web server is here in a GK cluster. It is having again the GCS views and other integration, auto scaling, some enhanced feature in a Composer 2. And tenant project was having only Airflow database. So this was a Composer 2. But in Composer 2, a lot of customer faced issue while creating the Composer because of the IPs, because of the networks, because of the firewalls. A lot of issues were there while creating the Composer. And now there is a Composer 3. Okay, so you can see the Composer 3, which is the latest version. So this is a very simplified version. Let me just zoom in. So here in tenant project, so most of the services are in tenant project. Your GKE cluster is also in the tenant project, your database also in the tenant, it means in Google project. And your project, you will have only Cloud Composer UI. You will see only environment bucket and your logging and monitoring. Everything else is in the tenant project, and this is the most simplified version. Even this component version does not mandate the use of the VPC. So without connecting the VPC also, you can create this Cloud Composer environment, because the GKE cluster is not created in your project, it is managed and created in the Google project. Okay, so this is the Composer 3. Now we'll create the Composer 3. So you can try with the Composer 2 and Composer 1 is not there, so you can try with the Composer 2 and you will see GKE autopilot cluster in your project. Here you will see GKE autopilot cluster in your project, but in Composer 3 you will not see a GKE cluster because it is in tenant project. Okay, so that is the main difference between Composer 2 and Composer 3. Now hope this is clear to you. So no one is going to explain you these things because I worked on these things in detail. I did a lot of troubleshooting, I faced a lot of issues, I did a lot of like hands-on on this, so I am having bit good knowledge on the composer side, setting up the composers. Okay, so now I will go to the composer and I will go on composer 3. Okay, so I will try to create the composer 3, and it will take around I think 30 to 45 minutes and sometimes 1 hour to create the composer environment. And pricing, so it is a bit costly service compared to other services because it is having a lot of resources running behind it. It is having the GKE cluster running behind it. It is also having the auto scaling, so a lot of features it is having, so it is a bit costlier service. But it is also having some features like you can set the small environment, medium, large or custom. So what is small, medium? So it defined like for small environment you will have only one scheduler, one DAG processor, one triggerer, one web server, and worker will have auto scaling between 1 to 3. Medium will have like two scheduler, two web server. Large will have again the high CPU, high RAM. For your, you can see for medium you are having 5 GB storage, 4 GB RAM. Large you are having 10 GB. So there is some high specification for the large, and the pricing also will vary. But if you go with the small, I'll show you the pricing. So pricing will be, if I am counting in the Indian rupees, so it's around 36,000 per month for the small composer environment if you are running continuously. But if you are just, I prefer to use it for a day and then I can delete it once I complete my hands-on. Hardly, like if you keep it running for whole day as well, the small environment will cost you around 1200 rupees. Okay, so if you are having the free trial account, you can definitely do the hands-on, because without hands-on you will not learn about the Cloud Composer. Okay, so let's say I will give the name now, Test Composer. Okay, so here you have to select the service account. Okay, for the composer 3 it is mandated to select the service account. So either you can use existing service account or you can create the new service account. So I will create a new service account, but what service account permissions do I need? So that again mentioned in the documentation, that what permissions we need for the composer service account. Okay, so if you go to the Cloud Composer 3, there are a couple of permissions required, and it is having the separate role as well. So create an environment, and here you will see, so some permissions are required. Yeah, create or choose environment service account. So we need a composer worker role. Okay, if we creating the service account, so I will create a service account. I will go to IAM and I will create a service account, and will give the cloud composer worker role, which is mentioned here. Create service account, identity access management, required role is composer worker, and it is having the required permission because it create the GK cluster, it create the storage bucket. So all required permissions are there in composer worker. So you can check the role composer worker and check what are the different roles or permissions it is having. So if I go to roles, and I'll show you in different roles. So here I will just show you the permissions within the composer worker role. So this is having good permissions. So composer worker, okay. So if I show you this role and the permission within this role, so you will see a lot of permissions for this role. There are 58 permissions. So all permissions related to artifact registry, then permissions related to the container, it means the GK cluster, permissions related to the cloud build, then permissions related to storage also would be there. Lot of permissions. This role is PubSub permissions, then storage permissions. So lot of permissions. These are sufficient permission to get started with the cloud composer. So you can go to service account. So I'll create new service account. I will give the name as a composer SA for composer service account. Create and continue. And role, as I seen in the documentation, we can give the composer worker role. Okay, so we'll go with this role. If we are getting any permission denied error, we will give that additional role, but as per the documentation, this should be sufficient to get started with the composer. So now composer SA is here. So let's go and select the role. So it will not show, we have to reload, or we have to go back and again go to create composer 3, and I will just give the name as a test composer. Location you can choose anything. I am going with that, and I will go with the, why it is still not showing, so maybe let me reload, and then I can choose the service account. So some videos might take time, but I just want to cover all the things. Now you can see the composer service account is here. I will go with the small composer, that should be sufficient. Now here one thing to remember, if I am not giving the network attachment or VPC, still we can create the cloud composer, okay. If you need, you can create, but that does not give lot of features, because your composer is in the, your lot of resources are in the tenant project and managed by Google. So definitely it is secure, but having the VPC, you can have your own firewalls, or there are different options to manage your security for a cloud composer 3, and you can go through the documentation, or you just let me know in the comment section if you are having any issues while creating the composer 3 environment. Now I'll simply hide this and I will create. So it will hardly take around 35 to 40 minutes to create the cloud composer environment. Okay, so meantime I'll just fast forward or pause this video, and then once it is created, I will show you the UI or the architecture, what are the resources it created in the composer. Okay, so meanwhile I'll just pause this video. Now you can see the composer environment is created. You can see the success status. The environment is up and running now. So we'll just walk through the different components of the cloud composer environment. Let me just dismiss it. I'll just open the composer environment, and within the environment we will see the different sections. I'll just try to walk you through the different sections here. So first is the monitoring, where it will show the monitoring of all the different components of the composer. So as I mentioned, it is having the scheduler, DAG processor, workers, triggerers, web server, SQL database, user workload. So all monitoring will show here. So now we just created. So okay, one more thing, so I'll just go back and I'll show you. So it took around 20 minutes to create. Sometimes it takes more, sometimes less, but hardly around 20 to 45 minutes it usually takes to create the composer environment. Okay, so now we recently created, so we'll just check for the last 1 hour. and you can see the status. Currently everything is green. Okay, so this is the environment creation time, else these will show the environment operation, and this was the environment creation in blue. If red, it means it was initially unhealthy, but now it is completely healthy. So airflow environment is working fine. So you can see the DAGs or schedulers, DAG processor, each of the environment health here. That is just to check the health for you. You can see this workload. This is completely okay. Then for workers also you can see the workers should be in healthy state. So yeah, I mean all the things are working fine currently as our environment is just up and running. You can check some logs here. Okay, then the environment configuration. So while creating the environment, we have given the service account. These details are here. Composer version, Python version, then some configuration like how much schedulers you want, how much DAG processor. Earlier we started with these small, but let's say suppose in future you want to increase the schedulers from 1 to 2, you can just change it here. For DAC processor you can also change, then triggerer you can change here. So most of the things you can increase. Sometimes it have the restriction on decreasing because we started with these small configurations. Okay, the network configuration, we haven't attached any network and subnetwork. As I mentioned, composer 3 you cannot, you can create without network as well, without VPC as well. It's not mandatory to use the VPC, as most of the stuff is running in the tenant project which is managed by Google. Okay, so here then the airflow configuration. So if you are using the open source airflow and you are installing it on the servers, so I have a video on that as well, how to configure the airflow server on the Linux box. So there you will see one airflow.config file, and you can define the different configuration in airflow.config file. But here that configurations are again managed by Google, but you can override that configuration using the edit button, and then you have to give the configuration which you have to override. You can see the specified values override configuration option from airflow.config. So different options you can see in the documentation, but again what are the best practices, that is completely managed by Google in airflow.config. And you can set the environment variables, you can install the Python packages. If your Python data pipeline is using additional packages, you can just add the Python packages here. So this is mostly hardly a one-time activity to create the composer environment, and then we'll keep creating the DAGs. Now what is the DAG and where we can see the DAG? So even though Google Cloud also given option here to see the DAG, but the best way is to go to the web server and check all available DAGs here. So by default there is one airflow monitoring DAG which just check the health of the environment. Whenever you create the cloud composer, this DAGs will be always there, and which executes for every 10 minutes. Okay, so now I'll just, other components I already mentioned. Now I'll just go to the airflow web server. So web server host your airflow UI. So you can simply click on this airflow UI, and it will open up the actual airflow web server for you. You can simply select your existing Gmail ID which is having access to your Google Cloud environment. So there is also again the separate roles and permission to access the web UI, and you can go through the documentation for that as well. I will be covering in later part of the video in our playlist. Now here you can see this is how your DAG look like. Now this is a one DAG currently which is by default there, which keep checking the state of the airflow environment, health of the airflow environment. And if you open this DAG, you will see only one task is there. But in, if we looking for the data pipelines, there will be a more complex and multiple DAGs. So this DAGs is just running the echo command and checking the health of the environment. If echo command is not working, it means the worker is not healthy or other components are not healthy. Okay, so it is just running the echo command. You can see the logs here. Okay, so it is just running the echo command, echo test, and output is test. Okay, and one success, it means the environment is healthy, and it is executing each 10 minutes. Now how this airflow monitoring DAG is created? So creating DAG is simple. You have to just create the DAG definition file in Python. So code will look like this one. So you can see this is the simple code. This is your DAG definition. You will mention the parameter, default argument, here the default argument that start date should be any past date, so it will start immediately, and then retries. If you want to retry for 1 times, 2 times, or every 5 minutes once failed, you can give the retry. Then here you can see the DAG name, then default argument which is mentioned here. Description you can give, which will be visible here. Okay, this is the DAG description. Then schedule every 10 minutes. This is the cron expression. Maximum occurrence, it means, let's say suppose one DAG is running and it is not completing in 10 minutes, again one more DAG can be triggered parallelly, so there is maximum occurrence can be 2 catch up fast. So there are different argument which you can pass, and this is the task, so you can define the task using the any of the operators. So we'll see in details what are the operator, but this is the bash operator. It means it is executing the shell command or bash command, and it is just printing the test. Okay, so all these is the simple DAG definition files, and we will create a more DAG, more task in our next video. So this is just to give the overview of Airflow. So you can also see the cluster activity here. So in cluster activity you will see the again the health of the cluster from the Airflow UI. So you can see the metadata database is healthy, scheduler is healthy, triggerer healthy, DAG processor healthy, DAG run status currently 2 success, task instance 2 success. If failed, it will show the red. Unpaused DAG, so currently there is only one DAG, so it will show 1. So that's just about the overview of a Cloud Composer and Airflow. So in our next video we will see how to create our first DAG and how to create a multiple task in a DAG.